We had a compounded annual growth rate of total shareholder return of 15% a year. We took the stock price from 20 some dollars to 200, market cap from 300 million to 3.5 billion. We expanded to 176 countries around the world, and we 7x revenue. But we only sell oil in a can, right? No.
Garry Ridge led WD-40 Company for 25 years,
growing it until 4 out of 5 American households own a can.
Now a top global leadership expert,
he teaches executives that the biggest growth lever
is making people care about their work.
We're pretty good at writing strategy, but how do you enable the strategy? It's the will of the people times strategy equals success. So how do you build the will of the people? I didn't know how to do it. I ended up signing off on every new hire. We were responsible for them. I got a lot of negative feedback. We don't have enough people. But guess what? We had enough to get the job done, and those that were there felt safe. Because we had such a high employee engagement, our output was so high. It's winning the trust of the people.
Garry, I'm really grateful that you could fly here and spend time with us to teach the world about the powerful relationship between a CEO and a head of people, or a CHRO, or whatever you want to call this position. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me along. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you too. I've been a huge fan of your work for years, and I really admire you because you didn't start as CEO. You had 10 years at WD-40 before you came into the CEO seat. And what did that teach you? What was the difference of being built there versus them going to buy you and have you come in as a CEO?
Well, I think there were two things. Firstly, of that 10 years, I spent nearly 6 of them in my homeland, Australia.
Yes.
When I started with WD-40, I started as the managing director of the Asia Pacific subsidiary, which didn't exist. We had to build it up from scratch. So those 6 years operating at a distance from what you would call headquarters really taught me a lot. And given our goal eventually was to take the blue and yellow can with a little red top to the world, I knew the barriers that happened to be at distance. And one of them was, how do you make decisions when you're 8,000 miles away? So that was really a big learning for me, and I think I benefited from that. And when I moved to San Diego, I didn't move to be CEO. I was asked to move to head up our global expansion program. I'd done a lot of work in Asia Pacific, and it was exciting. And one of my kind of reflection learning moments in life is great things happen when you disrupt yourself. And there's probably nothing more disruptive, or there's some, I guess there is, of moving a family 8,000 miles across the ocean to a country where people drive on the other side of the road. So that was it. So I think that was a couple of the things that were really exciting to me.
Can you talk a little bit about who tapped you to move over? What was the process like from a people standpoint to say, okay, we think Garry's the person for this next job? What was it like for your family to move? What type of people operations systems enabled that move for you, and how was that experience?
Yeah, the person that actually employed me in Australia was this then CEO. His name was Jerry Schleif. And Jerry used to fly down to Australia when I was actually working for the licensee of the brand in Australia. So I'd had a few years experience with WD-40. And in the mid-'80s, they were getting really serious about taking the brand globally. So they'd opened a subsidiary in the UK, one in Canada, and they wanted a base for Asia Pacific. So, I'd got to know Jerry, and one day I got a phone call, and it was, "G'day, Garry, this is Jerry. This is a confidential conversation. We're not going to renew the license for WD-40 with the licensee. We want to really invest and build a brand in Asia Pacific. How about joining us and helping us do that?" And I said, "Oh, wow." Anyhow, my dad was an engineer. And I said to my dad at that time, "What do you think about me working for WD-40, Dad?" He said, "You can't go wrong with that stuff, son." So I guess first rule in life, really listen to what Dad says. So, on July 4th, 1987, we opened WD-40 Company Australia. And on January 1, 1988, we actually went operational. And I spent most of my time not in Sydney. I spent it in China and Taiwan and Hong Kong and the Philippines and all of the Asian markets as we were building up the distributor markets. And in 1994, I was having a conversation with Jerry, and I said, hey, is there anything else you'd like me to do? What else can I help you with? He said, funny you should ask. Do you want to move to the US? And I said, to do what? He said, why don't you come over here and help me take the brand globally? He said, I don't have anyone in the organization that really has a passion to do that. They'd opened the subsidiary in the UK. It wasn't necessarily going, at the speed they wanted it to. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So we packed up our toys and we moved to San Diego. And then 3 years later, he retired. And for my sins, I was tapped on the shoulder and asked if I would like to be the CEO. And the reason is that I really had a passion for global business. And I really thought that we had great opportunities globally. So that's how it happened.
So there's a few things I'm observing, and I want you to tell me if I'm tracking right. There was no HR person tapping you on the shoulder. It was a direct leader to team member conversation about where you were going and where you wanted to go. You had crushed Asia Pacific from a business standpoint, right? So you had done it with excellence. People ask me, like, how do I get promoted? And I say, you crush your current job. You take real care of it, and then you earn the opportunity. So it sounds like you did that. Did you know 3 years before he retired that he was looking at you as a possible successor for the CEO job?
Not really. But interestingly, my dad gave me some other advice. He said, get in the game, play your best game every game, and there's a chance you'll get picked on the A team.
Yes.
So that was always my philosophy. Get in and do your best.
Yep.
And there's a chance. And I wasn't a big promoter of myself. In fact, there were a couple of other people within the organization that were thought to be the successors for the CEO role. Because why would this bloke from Australia who'd never been to Wall Street ever be tapped on the shoulder to be the CEO of a US public company? Doesn't understand the US market really because he's never worked in it. Why would any board of directors choose that person? They all thought it would be someone who was internally understood the biggest market they had. The board, I guess I might say in their wisdom, saw that our growth was outside the US, and they said, it's going to take a lot to mess up the US market, but it's going to take a lot of focus to grow the global market.
Yeah. So this is really interesting when you're looking at skills and you have CEOs watching this and they're looking for their successor. What advice would you give them?
The advice I would give them is, have you identified the right skill set for what the opportunity is for the company to grow? But more importantly, and this is where I come from as far as what I believe is really important, is do they understand that it's not about them?
How did that happen though, Garry? Like in all the things I've read about you in the videos I've watched, you have come to a place of true service as a leader. When in your career did you figure that out?
In 1999. I was 2 years into being CEO of WD-40 Company. It was 1997 when I was given the opportunity. I knew, with the help of the team we had, how to build a global strategy. What was always on my mind was, how are we going to have an organization that no matter what time it was, anywhere in the day, anywhere in the world, people were excited and empowered to make decisions. Now, I learned that because of my time down in Australia. When I was in Australia, I mentioned to you earlier, I had this distance thing and time zone thing.
You did. It's big. I've led teams in Sydney, and so you've got to think about your weekends, right?
Yeah. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I had all of the authority that I needed to be able to do whatever I needed without having to wait for someone to wake up in San Diego or whatever. Now, I had a lot of authority, but I needed some sort of structure to do that. So that was really, the core is how I thought about it. And I was traveling on a Qantas 747. I was traveling from Los Angeles to Sydney, 38,000 feet above the South Pacific Ocean at 2 a.m. in the morning in mid-1990. And as you do when you travel, or as I do, I take stuff to read.
Yeah.
So I was reading and I read a quote that was attributed to the Dalai Lama. And it says, "Our purpose in life is to make people happy. If you can't make them happy, at least don't hurt them." I thought, wow, wouldn't that be wonderful if you could build an organization like that? And then, funnily enough, I read a quote from Aristotle, who was born in 384 BC. And it said, "Pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work." And I went, oh, duh. And if I looked at all of the data that was out there, we weren't putting pleasure in jobs. 70% of people were going to work disengaged or actively disengaged. So I thought, wait a minute, we're pretty good at writing strategy, but how do you enable the strategy? And I thought, well, it's the will of the people times strategy equals success. So how do you build the will of the people? And I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And I thought, So I got back to San Diego, and I was reading something in the local newspaper. It was the Union Tribune. And I read about a master's degree in leadership at the University of San Diego. And it was put together by Dr. Ken Blanchard, the 1 Minute Manager, the guru of servant leadership.
Incredible.
Who just had his 87th birthday last week.
I saw that.
And the University of San Diego. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'm going to go find out about that. So I went to this information session, and Ken was speaking, and he said, most leadership programs get people in the head. We got to start getting people in the heart as well. And I went, you know what? So I dug around a little more on that, and I enrolled in this master's program. So here I am, 2 years in, CEO of a US public company. I went back to school.
Okay.
And I wanted to confirm what I thought I knew and learn what I didn't know. So for the next 2 years, under the tutelage of Ken and many others, I learned the power of servant leadership. And as the CEO, I was able to play with that and put it into action. So we did. And people used to laugh. They'd say, he goes to school on Sunday, he implements it on Monday. And that was probably roughly right.
Yeah.
So what worked, we did more of, and we built this engine of building a high will of the people. And as you know, the end result was we had 93% employee engagement. 98% of our people said they love to work at the company. And 97% of people globally said they trust their coach or they respect their coach, which is their manager. You may know I hate the word manager.
I do too. I hate the word HR as well.
I do too.
Yes.
And our head of HR, we didn't call it HR. It was Global Organizational Development.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That was my first title I named myself, was Organizational Development.
Yeah.
Because I thought that is what you're doing. You're developing an organization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was Global Organizational Development. We used to call him God, the G-O-D. Not really. That was my dear friend Stan Seawich, who I worked with for many, and who I still do, who still work with. Stan and I do a lot of consulting together these days, helping organizations identify and clarify their purpose,
Yep.
identify their values and what values really mean, and then what's the leadership behavior that has to go in place.
Yeah.
So I went back to school, and Ken and I became dear
Very good
friends. I ended up sitting on Ken Blanchard's company board for 10 years.
Yes,
So I
incredible.
got to suck it in as much as I could. We wrote a book together called Helping People Win at Work.
Yes.
The byline being, don't mark my paper, help me get an A.
Yes.
Because our job as a leader is not to mark people's papers, it's
No.
to help them get A's. And that was a wonderful experience. I loved that program so much. I created a program within the company called the President's Path to Leadership.
Yes.
And over a 25-year period, we sent 30 people fully paid through that master's degree at USD. So it ended up being embedded in the organization. So it was really powerful.
Amazing. Well, so everybody watching is salivating, and I want to call something out. You didn't just have 94% positive engagement scores for a year, you had them for a decade. And that's what I love about what you've done is you've created a repeatable, durable pattern that everybody wants. It's not about 1 year, 4 years, about a decade. And so take me back. You talked about going to get your master's with Ken, and you implemented it when you went to work on Monday. When did you hire Stan, who was the head of organizational development, AKA head of people? And how did you know that Stan was going to be your partner? I've read you've talked about chemistry and ability to do work, but if I was a CEO watching this, how would they identify the right partner?
So Stan was a consultant to WD-40 Company.
Okay.
He said he had the longest job interview of any time. He actually ran his own business, and he had a business called HRG Consulting. And he used to help us in the area of compensation and whatever. And then I engaged Stan as my coach.
Okay.
So he was my coach.
Great.
Anyhow,
So you just called him out of the blue and you said, Stan, and this is when you were named CEO, or was this before?
no, he was my coach when I was CEO.
Okay.
Probably pretty well into my role.
Okay.
But I wanted a coach, and I used to have Stan come and sit in meetings and tell me how bad I was, and you know what I needed to change. And
So what was it about Stan that made you reach out to him? Who was he that caught your attention and said, I want him to give me feedback?
he was a people-centered leader. There was no doubt about that. He understands the psychology of leadership. He's got a degree in organizational psychology, so that was very helpful. And he's just a damn good bloke. He's just a really good bloke. Anyhow, he was consulting with me, and about, I guess, I can't remember exactly, maybe 15 years ago, we needed to bring in a new head of global organizational development. And Stan was with me on a trip to London, and we were doing some work together, and we were in the King's Arms pub in London having a steak and ale pie and a pint of beer. And I dropped it on Stan. One of my favorite things I was known for is if Garry says, what if, something's going on.
Something's happening.
So we're having a beer and a pie, and I said to Stan, what if you join me and help me in this next season of our company really embed what we believe in, which is it's all about the people. And he had his own company. He said, Anyhow, by the end of the second beer, I'd convinced him. And he said, if there was any company he would work with, because I wanted a business partner. That's how I told her. I said, I don't want I want a business partner, because the will of the people is really hard. Writing a strategy for an organization is not so hard.
It's not.
But it's the will of the people. And the will of the people, I say, culture equals values plus behavior times consistency. Now, I stole the first bit of that from my friend Simon Sinek,
Yes.
who in his book said culture equals values plus behavior. And I said to Simon, you missed a word. It's consistency.
It is.
You have to have values and behaviors, and you have to consistently act upon them, nurture them, and treat them well, because culture is not a microwavable event. It takes a crockpot approach.
It does.
And if we think of it that way, now, this is why it's so hard for CEOs, because you can write a strategic plan and you can see what's working and what's not working pretty quickly, and you can adapt it and whatever. This culture thing, there's no fairy dust here. You've got to work at it. But if you do, and you create over time, because we didn't get to 93% overnight. It took us a number of years to build the trust of the people and get there. But once you get there, you can have the best strategic plan in the world. Let's write our strategic plan. Someone gives us 70 out of 100, some smart professor. But if only 30% of your people are going to work every day and passionately executing against the strategic plan, you're getting 30% value.
That's it.
But if 80% are, you're getting 80% value. Or duh, But unfortunately, a lot of CEOs out there are working for public companies that all they talk about is what are you going to do in the next 90 days? And if you miss your quarter by a penny, then Wall Street beat you up. And, I went through that, and I said to Wall Street,
No.
Don't follow me quarter to quarter, because you'll jump off a cliff. And in fact, I've sat across from portfolio managers and said, don't buy our stock. You'll never be happy. I want you to be happy. But then we had some very large long-term investors who said, we want to be here for the long haul. Because I said to them, we want to build an enduring company that will be proud to hand on to others. Now, those CEOs that are listening to us now might say, that's all good. How was the result? Well, we had a compounded annual growth rate of total shareholder return of 15% a year. We took the stock price from, I don't know, 20-some dollars to 200, market cap from 300 million to 3.6 billion or 3.5 billion. We expanded to 176 countries around the world, and we 7x'd revenue.
Sounds good to me.
But we only sell oil in a can, right? No, we had an organization that had a high will of the people and a reasonable strategy. And the strategy was probably wrong and roughly right, and I understood that.
How do you blend the great thoughts of Simon Sinek? I'm a huge fan, but he's not an operator. So you took his principles and Ken Blanchard's principles and you operationalized them. How did you and Stan start that process to get to that 94% strong engagement? What are some of the key processes that you built?
Foundations, number one, do you have a compelling purpose? I often say, imagine a place where you go to work every day and you make a contribution to something bigger than yourself.
Yes.
So why are we getting up every day? WD-40, your product is not your purpose.
No. I love your purpose. Will you share it?
Yeah. Our purpose was we existed to create positive, lasting memories by solving problems in factories, homes, and workshops around the world. We solved problems and we created opportunities.
Yes.
For the people that worked in the company, for those that we served outside in the organization. So number one, purpose.
Compelling purpose.
Number two, values. You need to have a hierarchical set of values that do two things. They protect people and they set people free.
Yes.
And our values, each one of our values had a written description underneath it of what that looks like.
Define it.
Defining what it is. So our first value was we value doing the right thing. Interestingly enough, our second value was we value creating positive, lasting memories in all of our relationships. And it had our last value, number 6, we value sustaining the company's economy.
I love this one. This is my favorite one that I've never used before. Will you talk a little bit about how you operationalize that?
Yeah, so when we say that, I say that if we're protecting and growing the economy, all of the constituents actually benefit from that.
Yes.
So it's not about being profitable, just being profitable, but profit is the engine to growing the company's economy. So everybody can look at that and say, well, how did I help sustain the WD-40 economy today by being better at what I do, by selling more product, by improving our margins, by being good people, doing what we did. Now, the wonderful thing about that is it helps you make great decisions.
It does.
And I'll give you an example.
Yes.
This is a nearly right story. I change it around a little bit to protect the innocent.
You have to.
But it's a sunny day in San Diego, and someone walks into the supply chain and says, hi, I'm from Acme Chemical Company, and I have an ingredient that we make that we believe can increase your profitability by $4 million. You're going to be a hero today. I know after I give you all this information, and I've got efficacy tests and all this, I can imagine you going up to see your CEO and you might even get a promotion. And imagine you're a public company. Wall Street are going to absolutely love you. And the person who is, has a role of, making some decisions said, oh, that sounds really, really interesting. Tell me more. Is there anything I should know? And well, it's just one thing, but don't worry. It's not unethical, immoral, illegal. You just have to put a little warning on your can that says, in the state of California, contents of this can is known to cause cancer. It's called a Prop 65 warning. But don't worry about it. Everybody does it. You go to Walmart, it's on the door. And the person says, oh, no, I'm sorry, I can't take you up on your offer. What? It's $4 million. I know. But I'm empowered because we have a hierarchical set of values. My empowerment comes from making decisions around those values. Our first value is we value doing the right thing. Our second value is we value creating positive, lasting memories in all of our relationships. Cancer does not create a positive, lasting memory.
It's true.
I'm sorry, I can't take it. You know what? You don't understand. I need to talk to someone who can actually make a decision here. You obviously can't make that decision. This person can actually say, you can talk to anyone you like in this organization, anywhere you want, and you're going to get exactly the same answer. How does that person feel? Empowered, living the values, but having a basis to be able to do that. Yeah. Now, that's nearly a true story, but there were decisions like that made. And one of the wonderful things that we did was we had what I then called our tribe members, because we called ourselves a tribe, not a team. And tribe was not related to any indigenous group. It goes back to the beginning of mankind.
Yes.
And the reason I call it a tribe is one of the keys of organizations is a place where you know and feel like you belong. Anyhow, the great thing is that anybody in the organization can make those decisions, and the tribe member feels empowered to be able to do that, which is so important.
So how did you and Stan work to create the opportunity for this person to say no to this $4 million opportunity? What was the process that you two created that scaled this ability of ownership that wasn't just admired but actioned on?
Well, we all acted on the values openly. We threw out the annual review process because I think it's a stupid thing. And we went into what we call conversational reviews, where we would formally sit down or formally have a conversation with our tribe members every 90 days. In that discussion, they would share how they have progressed against getting their A, because we would have at the beginning of the year agreed what an A looks like. Okay. And the second part was our values. So we'd ask everybody in the organization to share with us, how have you lived our values in the last 90 days? Give us true examples. And we don't want visitors. We only had two measures. You either visit our values or you live our values. Now, as you would imagine, if you consistently do that over time, it just becomes embedded in your behavior.
You are.
And early on, we'd have lunch and learns, and people would get together and talk about, how I lived our values and what it brought to the organization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, this is simple. It's not easy. And time is not your friend.
We know every day that culture really trumps all. We have our mission values there on Nectar, and we have a mission committee of our board. And, that's kind of soft. How do you really measure that you're meeting that mission? What's been great for those board members is for us to take in some of the charts and reports from Nectar, and we see what values are being acknowledged. I think the engagement has improved in that we are filling positions. The word of mouth that we have in the community that we can define and acknowledge through Nectar is making a difference.
Okay, I want to talk about time not being my friend, but it is simple. And now we're laden with charts and curves and distributions and high performers and low performers. What would you say to the CEO and head of people or organizational development organizing that way?
Make it real to the people. Let's just be real around, do we have an organization where people know and feel like they belong? Sure, you got to have measurements, but let's not overcomplicate this thing. Let's not complicate it with confusion to make out how smart we are.
Yeah.
We're dealing with people. Do people know and feel like they belong? Do people know that the work they do matters and makes a difference, and are they being recognized for that? Do people feel safe? Because we got rid of this stupid word called failure and we called it learning moments, because the number one responsibility of a leader is to be a learner and a teacher. That's the only reason we should be there. And then finally, are we being coaches, not managers? Do our people wake up every day knowing that the person that they're working alongside to, their boss, if you will, has only one objective, and that's to help them step into the better version of their personal self, to help them win the game? If you have those in place, then you have an organization that's sustainable over time. But it takes time.
How do I know? Am I doing surveys?
Yeah, we did the traditional employee opinion survey. In fact, I brought the employee opinion survey in the year 2000 because I didn't know what the state of our organization was. Now, let me be clear. the culture at WD-40 wasn't bad. It just wasn't a culture that was going to take us to our global position. It was a culture built for an insular US-based company. So we had to maneuver and massage it so we could be global.
Again, meeting your purpose.
Meeting our purpose.
So you're aligning your people processes with the ability to be a global organization.
Yes.
And so you brought in surveys. What were some of the other things that you did to be able to scale? Because I can hear people listening to this right now and they're going to say, well, Garry, how does that scale?
Well, number one is we assigned the responsibility not to what people call human resources, but to the leaders themselves, to the coaches.
This is huge.
Yeah.
We did another interview with somebody that was an organization like Ray Dalio's. And this is important. I think a lot of people think it is the HR responsibility. I really want you to dive into what is the responsibility of the leader.
This responsibility of the leader is to lead in a way that builds the culture within the area that they have the responsibility to lead. So when we did the employee and opinion surveys, and we were able to cut and dice them by area, by whatever, by country, by department, we would take the results back to the leader and say, this is what you and your people said. You own this. HR is here to support you and give you, tools and whatever, but I'm holding you accountable.
You were the model.
Yeah. It's they get the results, and HR can't change the results.
It's so interesting, being inside of a public company, they don't fire HR if they don't make the number.
Right.
Right? So the leaders have to be the place that accountability lives.
Absolutely. They're the ones who are going to influence the leadership and the change.
Yes.
So we used to hold them accountable. And then we then built a wonderful internal leadership development program. Stan built it. Well, he brought it from his old company, and it was called Leadership Lab. It was a 3-stage leadership development that we said anybody in the company can go into. Because that's the other thing. There's very little leadership training out there.
There isn't. I really think that GE was the last bastion of strong leadership training.
We promote someone into a role. Now you got to lead people, but we don't help them understand the principles of leadership.
No, but we also are lacking leaders that will take true ownership for it. They want to offload it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there were a number of things that went on in the organization over time, but again, consistency and we were proud, and we would share. And as I said, we had this thing called the learning moment. We said, we don't make mistakes, we have learning moments. And a learning moment is a positive or negative outcome of any situation that needs to be openly and freely shared to benefit all people. The other thing is that as the CEO, I loved spending time in what I call the stinky locker room.
Oh, tell me about the stinky locker room.
I wasn't the sit behind the desk kind of guy. I was out there in the field. When I was in San Diego in my full-time role, most mornings you'd find me down in the open area as people were coming to work, and I would be greeting them and talking to them, and I'd be dancing in the customer service area with the staff, because I couldn't do it without them. I am the dean of dumbassery, and the 3 most important words I ever learned were I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I had to show these people. I created this monster
tell me
here.
about this.
This is Alec, or it could be Alice, the soul-sucking CEO.
This is my favorite term of yours, soul-sucking CEO.
Of Fear Incorporated.
Yes.
And Alec or Alice has some attributes. Their ego eats their empathy instead of their empathy eating their ego. Yeah. They're a micromanager. They got to be in everything. They're always right. They have all the answers. They spend no time in the stinky locker room. They think they're corporate royalty. I've spent my life climbing this corporate ladder. You won't find me in the cafeteria or the tea room. Someone will bring coffee to my desk if they can break through my locked door. Now I'm being extreme, I know. But
I like it.
But, and so I talk about, this person when I'm out speaking about culture, and people in the audience go like this.
Yes, I've seen that person.
And I give dolls away, and they end up on desks.
They do.
Somewhere or another. But again, I think it's just making people aware. And, the fish rots from the head. And if we're not out there living the culture and and being with the people and showing them that, golly, I rode a horse into Times Square in a suit of armor. Like, why? Well, because I wanted to show I was vulnerable, and I that's what I did. So
Yeah. So what happens? You're having these surveys. You are showing and demonstrating accountability by sharing your failures and learning moments. What happens when a leader on your team isn't demonstrating these principles?
you share them with a competitor. It's not that vicious.
Another CEO we talked with, they said they offer them back to the market.
Yeah, similar thing. Yeah. But really, our role is to, I want people to be happy. And if people aren't performing and they're not enjoying their work, they're not happy.
Yeah.
So we would go through a process of, because we had these ongoing discussions, of really coaching people along to the point then that I could have a conversation with you and say, look, it's obvious to me that, or to both of us really, because we've spent time on this, that you're not happy in your role.
Yeah.
So let's find a place for you to be happy. Now, it may be another role within the organization, or if you need to go somewhere else, we'll help you go there with respect and dignity. And it's quite funny. I got a call one day from the head of an outplacement firm, and we'd helped someone leave with respect and dignity. And part of that was we gave them some outplacement. And this person was in the lunchroom, and the head of the outplacement firm heard the conversation. And this person was convincing someone else why WD-40 was a great place to work. Now, in reality, if you want to go back to the hard words, we fired that person. But we did it. We helped them along the way to realize that they could be happy somewhere else. Yeah. So we treated them with respect and dignity. Now, unless they were immoral, illegal, then there was no question.
Yeah.
But one of the things I'm very proud of is we never laid anybody off in my 25 years back in 2008, 2009, when we were going through the quote unquote great financial crisis, I said, it's better that all of us suffer a little than a few of us suffer a lot. So we're going to get together and work out what we have to do to prepare ourselves if this wave of, the economy hits us. And we did. And fortunately, we didn't get hit that bad. And we didn't lay anybody off. And when I was doing sort of my farewell tour at WD-40, I was over in Europe, and more than a dozen people said to me, that was just a defining moment because we trusted you. And I said, wow. And in going through COVID, my mic drop moment as a leader was, it was January 2021. We were a year nearly into COVID. I was concerned that we may have been draining cultural equity, even though we'd pivoted and we were doing a lot of things to keep us together.
What were some of the things you were doing during that time to keep you together?
We had virtual comedians come in. We did virtual cooking classes.
Oh, fun.
We did virtual happy hours. I wrote, I don't know how many personal notes I wrote to people all around the world. We brought my friend Chester Elton in, and who's all about gratitude, and we did sessions on gratitude and just reaching out to people, calling them, hey, we know you're there. We can't touch you, but we know you're there. So January 2021, I said to the folks, let's go out and do a pulse survey and just see if we are where we think we are. I think we're there. So we did the pulse survey, and the numbers came back, and they're all very strong. But one number went up.
Oh.
And the number was related to the question is, I am excited about my place and the company's future. And 97% of our people globally said they were excited about their place and the company's future. And I said, go back and check that. It can't be right. It's January 2021. We don't have any clear vision that COVID isn't going to kill us all. Why is this so? So we went out and the number was right. And I said, go find out why. Short answer, when we asked people, they said, I feel safe. If there's any place I want to be right now, I want to be here because we are living our just cause. And our just cause was a group of people that came together to protect and feed each other. And I went, mic drop.
Yeah.
That's it.
Because workplace is the new community, right? People aren't getting it from their neighborhoods or from their religious affiliations. They're getting it from their organization. So our job between, the head of people and the CEO is much more dramatic in creating community than it's ever been before. Hence the tribe, right?
Right. Well, that's why one of the chapters in my book is be a place people escape to, not from.
Yes.
And when we were going through COVID, there was talk about the Great Resignation, right?
Yes.
I wrote an article. I said, it's not the Great Resignation, it's the Great Escape.
Yeah, totally.
People are escaping these places they hated going to anyhow, and then trying to get them back. If there was a bad culture, you got all this pushback. Why do I want to go back there and be treated like that again?
Right.
No way, I can stay home and be happy. So again, business has a responsibility to build a better world. And we can do that by building cultures where people go to work every day, they make a contribution to something bigger than themselves, they learn something new, they're protected and set free by a compelling set of values, and they go home happy, because happy people build happy families build happy communities communities build a happy world, and damn, we need a happy world.
Yes, we do.
And no wonder young folks are shying away from business because their parents and whatever are going home and sitting around the kitchen table or whatever saying, I hate
So
my job.
miserable.
Yeah, I hate my job. I don't want to do that. And they say,
Well, I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that. No wonder they're looking for short-term rewards, because they say, well, my dad got laid off twice.
Yeah.
I might as well get everything I can right now,
Yeah.
because who knows, they're going to lay me off next week.
Let's talk a little bit about layoffs, because it's starting to build again I'm seeing it on my LinkedIn feed. If I go to a Kim Blanchard, I believe he would say it's our job to not overhire.
Mhm.
It's our job to manage our expenses so that we can get through anything. How did you build a financial model that insulated you in partnership with your head of people to avoid layoffs? Because I feel like the easy button, it's actually way easier to lay off people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to have this saying, don't get out over the top of your skis, and I ended up signing off on every new hire that we brought in.
Okay, this is really important.
And
Why did you do that?
Because we were responsible for them. And I didn't want us making stupid decisions.
Yeah.
If someone came to our organization, they were someone's husband, wife, brother, sister, significant other,
Yes.
and they trusted us. So I'll admit, I got a lot of negative feedback. We don't have enough people. But guess what? We had enough to get the job done, and those that were there felt safe. And because we had such a high employee engagement, our output was so high.
Yeah.
So again, it's winning the trust of the people. And I see people get on hiring sprees, businesses, and then things go bad.
Yeah.
We have to manage the business, and we had metrics. We had a gross margin target, an operating cost target, an EBITDA target, and we worked within that. And we were very disciplined in that. And when people said, we need to invest more, I'd say, okay, but we need to protect our people first, because without them, we're nothing.
And what role did Stan play in those metrics?
Well, Stan was there at the table. I mean, any leader out there that doesn't have the head of people sitting at the executive table is a loser, because again, it's the will of the people. And so Stan was there advising, sharing points of view, helping us build, what we needed to build around it. So, he sat right next to the CFO at my leadership table, because he was as important as the CFO and as the head of our trading divisions and whatever, because it was the culture that was the absolute motivator, the amplifier of what we did.
Was Stan as proficient in the metrics around margin and EBITDA as your CFO was?
Yeah. Well, the great thing about Stan too, he didn't come out of HR.
Okay, this is a huge point. I read this about him. Share a little bit about Stan.
He came out, he was an engineer, technical guy. He then further went on and got his degree, but he understood. And that's one of the things that I made sure all of our organizational development people did. I said, get out in the marketplace and understand our business.
Yes.
You're not going to sit back there and believe you know what's going on. Go do ride-alongs with our people. Go to China. Go here. Go there. Get alongside them. Have empathy for what they have to do, what they need to do. So, you don't do this sitting at a desk.
No, you're out with it.
Yeah.
So that you
That's
can
getting
have
your
the
shoes dirty.
conversations.
That's
Yes.
getting in the stinky locker room.
Yes. So all the way through the time you were public company CEO, you were signing off on every new hire.
Mm-hmm.
What to the question, well, Garry, I thought you trusted me. You trusted me and you provide freedom and my values of the organization that I can make these decisions. What is your response?
I'm responsible for the lives of the people that come to work with us. That's my biggest responsibility.
Yeah.
I knew that I could make a decision today that would harm people or help them. So I took that responsibility. Now, the other thing about me signing off is they had to do, it forced our leaders to do their homework.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it was legit, and there wasn't so many times, but it was an oversight that I thought, because I valued people so much.
So what was the balance? You had a leadership academy, you had great benefits, you had all of these things. How would I make a case for ROI for a program to run surveys, for a program to help in my communications? How did you think about those investments relative to human headcount investments and protecting your people? Because we have to balance all of those.
Yeah, well, again, in any plan, you need data or data. So, have measurements to be able to measure against. Don't overcomplicate it. It can be simple and easy, but, we needed to be able to have something to measure against, and we did.
Yeah.
This wasn't cowboy stuff.
Right.
But it was simplified to a point that everyone understood it. Yeah. So, we spent a lot of time talking about our people. I used to say to my leadership team, be under no misunderstanding. The only reason you exist is to help those you have the privilege to lead step into the best version of their personal self. And I made a promise once. I said, if I ever, or we ever, it negatively impact someone's life because we've been too lazy as our job as a leader, I will make sure that the highest person in the command chain pays that price. And I only had to do it once. We had someone that was let go, and I knew who this person was, and I thought, why? So I went to their immediate coach, and I said, tell me what. I said, can you please show me their development plan and their review process? And they kind of hesitated. Oh, we don't have one? So we've let this person down? So a little walk to the vice president's office, and it was, you know what happened here? Why didn't you live up to what we promised our people? And I got some answer. I said, you know what? You're not part of our team. You need to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did it once.
And you never had to do it again.
No.
And that part is, I've noticed, so hard for many founders and heads of people to work through, and CEOs, right? You don't want to make the tough calls. You wait too long to make tough calls, especially on your management and executive teams.
We protect our own comfort zone at the expense of other people's development.
Yes.
And the main reason those conversations become so uncomfortable is we haven't done the work at the beginning, which is it very clear what you expect from me and what I expect from you?
Yes.
So the first stage, and in the book that Ken Blanchard and I wrote, is we have to define, if we're going to help people to get an A, we have to define what an A looks like. So if an A walked in the room right now, what would it look like?
Yeah.
Do you know what it is? Yeah, I know it. So I'm here. But if we don't do that, those discussions become very uneasy. That discussion I had was not hard, because it was made very clear this is the standard that we were going to hold ourselves to. And you either did or you didn't.
Yep.
And we collectively agreed that was going to be the standard. So, if you chose not to, that means you didn't want to be here. It's not my fault. You're the one.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So Garry, in every one of these shows, we take a question from the last CEO, we pass it forward. And the question is, we have a purpose and we have a mission that's going to sustain a 10-year trek. In times like today where things are moving so quickly, would you go through learning moments more quickly on a quarterly basis or semi-annual basis? And how do you think about learning moments relative to the mission in a time where the world is moving so quickly?
Well, if you adopt the principles of learning moments, they happen on a daily basis.
You're going through it.
You're going through it. You know, a learning moment is a living thing within the organization. So, you know, most in organizations, I talk about no lying, no faking, no hiding.
Yes.
Most people don't lie. They fake and they hide.
Right.
And the reason they fake and hide is because of fear. So in an organization that is continually talking about learning and learning moments, they're happening on a daily basis. And you pivot around that as you should.
Yes.
One of the things I dislike are these, 90-day performance things.
I know.
We used to have an annual plan and we would have a 5-year vision.
Okay.
But we would be adjusting, things absolutely happen. You wake up one morning and you can't do business in Russia anymore. Woo!
There you go.
Oil prices go to $150 a barrel. Woo! Yeah. You've got to adapt. But in doing that, you take the learning moment, you apply your values, and you make the decision and you move on.
Yes. My teams would always say to me, well, do you have anything for me at the 90-day mark? And I said, if I had something for you, I would have called you after it happened and let you know that it happened. So I really used a daily, weekly, one-on-one cadence to go through all of those things. Anything that was immediate, you can count on me to call you.
Yeah.
Anything that isn't immediate, we'll talk about in our weekly one-on-ones and we'll work through it. And that was my number one question. What did you learn after that board meeting?
Right.
What did you learn after that product launch?
Well, interesting. You mentioned board meetings. I was known for having massive audiences at our board meeting. We'd have, a smaller audience where we were handling the perfunctory stuff.
Right.
But I'd invite, people into the meeting to have them present. My daughter is a dance teacher. Her name is Kate. She lives in Australia now. And she taught me a lesson many years ago. She said, Dad, you never put anyone on Broadway until you've watched them dance off Broadway. And I said, that is so true.
Yeah.
So I used to use the board meetings a bit of off Broadway.
Yes.
I want to see people dance and then to see if they could move on to Broadway. But getting back to the question, I think that if you have a continual learning environment, these things are popping up all the time and you decide what you're going to pivot and what you're not going to pivot.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I think we need to be very careful of is making finite decisions in times of uncertainty. And that was my learning moment around COVID. Companies and leaders were making finite decisions in times of extreme uncertainty. And the word maybe is okay.
It is.
It's okay. And I think most leaders are those that feel most comfortable in uncertainty.
Culture is made in uncertain times and difficult times.
Yep.
It's easy to have great culture in good times.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. Well, our closing question is, do you have a culture crush, somebody that you admire that you haven't spoken about?
I've been very fortunate in that I've been exposed to some wonderful people. When I say the three most influential, and it's the Dalai Lama, Aristotle, and Ken Blanchard, and Ken says, well, I'm in good company, aren't I?
You are.
But then, I've worked alongside and people like Simon and Marshall Goldsmith.
Oh, he's fantastic.
I known Marshall for years, and I was teaching at USD for 16 years. I taught in the master's program that I actually went to. I went back and I became an adjunct professor, and I used Marshall's work. What got you here won't get you there.
I love that. Staple at my library.
Yeah, and he came back. He came every year and was a guest presenter, and then we became good friends. There's so many. I mean, I don't really have a culture crush, but I want to hear what people are learning, and that's why I do what I do now. This is my legacy. I owe the world this because I want the world to be a happier place, and I can't do massive things, but I can do a lot of little things.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
And I must tell you, the word ASS in the book does not refer to anybody's bottom or posterior.
It does not.
It refers to a donkey.
Yes.
And if you think about the attributes of a donkey, they're very aligned with leadership.
Yes.
Donkeys are reliable, they're steady, they carry great loads, they'll protect you, they'll go uphill, they're there when you need them. And really, that's what a leader's all about. It's not about showing off.
No.
It's about carrying the load and getting people to where they need to go. So that's what leadership's about.
You know, I love that part in one of the YouTubes that I watched of you, where a lot of times people say, I want to be a leader, and ask them why. You become responsible for that person, their family, their community. Why do you want that responsibility? And you're great at articulating this as well.
Well, because you're going to make a difference in the world.
That's right. That's right.
We got to do that.
Yes.
The world's not in a good shape right now.
Right. Right. We need more great leaders.
Yep.
You do. What question would you like to ask our next guest?
What are they doing to create a culture where people actually want to go to work?
Oh, I love that. What are you doing to create a culture where people actually want to go to work?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Garry, this has been an honor, a pleasure. I've learned so much. Thank you you can be anywhere in the world right now and you're with us. And we're grateful for your contribution to make the world a better place.
Well, thank you for what you do, because if there weren't these platforms to talk about it, it would go silent. So you're the most important person in this room right now.
Oh, you're kind. Thank you.